Hi, hello folks, Casual Leanne here. Now you'll notice once again that things are uncut. My computer has completely stopped recognizing this phone. And so because of that, I'm having to upload everything directly from my phone, which means no editing. But we will soldier on anyway. So welcome to the Talking Smack, or wait, no, not Talking Smack. There is but one post Smackdown, Smack Talking recap post show, and now that is the Smackdown Lowdown. According to Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer Radio, the reason for this name change, the reason there's no Talking Smack anymore, is because there's this other new show that's coming out on A&E called WWE Smack Talk with Booker T and Jackie Redmond, some other folks. And they just didn't want any confusion with that show. Now, it would seem to me that if you got that kind of possibility going, maybe you just rename the new show as opposed to the one that people have lots of attachments to. But the Talking Smack show is tied to so many iconic moments. I know, at least for me. In addition to the ones you usually think about, it's Cesaro and The Miz, talking to Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan. You've even got some epic ones from last year, like, Edge almost making Paul Heyman wet his pants on WrestleMania Saturday. You got Kevin Owens threatening Paul Heyman over the phone. I've reviewed that before. The moment that Seth Rollins found out that Edge was going to be the next one to get the Universal Championship opportunity instead of him, and he goes nuts on Talking Smack. There are so many moments that are associated with Talking Smack specifically that I hope, they kind of chew the meat and spit out the bones regarding content, and they hold on to what's good, even with this name change. But you might be wondering, is anything different so far? Has the format changed, the music, the footage, discussions? Well, no, not at all. They start with a clip of Roman spearing Riddle out of the sky from last week in their Universal Heavyweight WWE of all time Intergalactic Realms Championship title, whatever the name of it is. But they did, for my part, they did a great job of giving a little bit of suspense. I thought for just a moment that maybe Riddle might win. Of course he didn't, but since Roman's been so part-time lately, I wouldn't have minded seeing it even just for a moment, but I absolutely loved that. And then after that high, they completely dropped me down harder than like 15 F5s, because out of nowhere, here comes Brock Lesnar. Alrighty, so I don't know why, or I do know why, but why Brock Lesnar specifically had to be brought back just because, or not just because, but because Randy Orton was hurt. That I don't necessarily understand, but I'll come back to that momentarily. But Scott Stanford and Matt Camp are the hosts for the show. Stanford says that the name has changed, but they still have the same handsome hosts. I don't recall Jackie Redmond being handsome. I considered her more on the beautiful side, but it's looking like, at least for now, this might be more of a nominal change, and perhaps a host change. That may be permanent. There's something about the self-congratulatory two white guys that has like a 60s NFL type vibe to it. I don't know. It's a little bland. Nothing against Camp and Stanford, personally, of course. But, Kayla Braxton and Paul Heyman, R-Truth and Kevin Patrick, they just had these sort of unique, really vivid, entertaining kind of dynamics that can't really be matched. So we'll see how Stanford and Camp actually do as things go along. But yeah, moving back to Brock Lesnar, you know, I enjoy kind of a wild man of the woods, you know, I don't know, interacting with caribou or whatever. I enjoy that as much as the next person, but I've seen this match with he and Roman so many times. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, at first I thought he was just coming out to kind of get the hometown pop. Okay, it's Minneapolis. This is his home state. He's, going to be welcomed with open arms. But then when they started the actual angle, I was like, oh my goodness, they're actually doing this again. And they didn't have to. They don't have to do this for SummerSlam, this last man standing match. There are so many people that they could have tapped for SummerSlam instead of Brock. I mean, you could have brought Seth back in. Like, Roman was disqualified at Royal Rumble with their match. So the feud didn't have any kind of conclusive finish to it. It wasn't resolved, so you could have brought him back in. You could have brought Sheamus back into the main event picture. You know, the whole 515 thing. Sheamus 515 says, I just, kick your arse. Roman's first title reign literally lasted less than an hour because of Sheamus. You could have done something with that for SummerSlam. You could have built Ricochet back up. He's lost the Intercontinental title now. He could have a fire lit under him to face Roman. Anything like that. Anything that's not Brock versus Roman, part 5 million. Just, okay. And the last man standing stipulation is not making me any more excited about it, if I'm just being honest about it. But anyway, they replayed the announcement from Adam Pearce regarding Money in the Bank on the Celtic front. Pearce announces Sheamus's name first and then waits for Drew to start beating Sheamus's butt to announce that he's also qualified. But that image of Drew with, Sheamus's shillelagh, like, that was pretty funny. And Kayla had some questions for the Smackdown Warrior about Adam's decision. So Drew acknowledges that he and Sheamus have tempers, that they're Celtic. This comes with the territory. Sheamus got excited, stopped Adam Pearce mid-sentence, and Drew thought, it was just Sheamus who'd qualified. So he got mad and started whipping his butt. But he set a goal now to be Mr. Money in the Bank and beat Roman at Clash of the Castle. Now, the way he made it sound, like he said he couldn't make the match happen himself, it almost made it sound like the match wasn't official, at least in kayfabe. So that was a little weird, but McIntyre's enthusiasm, in general, it's infectious, as always. If it weren't for Clash of the Castle, I would say he would be the perfect person to go against Roman for SummerSlam, but, they have to save him for later. But I would even love to see the two of them in a triple threat with Bobby Lashley in there too, since Drew and Bobby already have a pretty extensive history. Again, anything to not be Brock and Roman. Since this is uncut, I'm going to move on to the next wrestler segment, so this video isn't like 20 minutes long. King was the guest host, in case you were wondering, so it appears that they are going to keep that kind of weekly guest panelist thing going. They showed a recap of, the dynamic with Shanky and Jinder Mahal. Shanky's got the music in him, thanks to Xavier Woods and his trombone. And I guess Shanky's the new Great Khali now. And I could have done without that part of the Great Khali, and I can do without Shanky too, in this regard. But I suppose it's just a way to turn him babyface and eventually separate he and Jinder. But Raquel Rodriguez, off of the back of her qualification for Money in the Bank, she went over Shayna and Baszler, was interviewed by Kayla Braxton also. So she asks what this actually means to her. Raquel cut your standard babyface promo about momentum. She almost beat Ronda. Now she's beaten Shayna, who is a powerhouse, and she talks about how sweet it'll finally be to cash in the contract and become a champion. She's got a plan for anything that could happen, study film, and make sure that she's ready to make the most of this opportunity. They replayed the end of the Last Laugh match between Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss. I didn't know that this was a hometown crowd for Moss, and then they show a backstage interview with he and Megan Morant. So, citing this history between, between Moss and his former employer, Happy Corbin, she asks him why this particular win, the Last Laugh win, was so important. And he responds, because it's been a long time, because they actually do have history. Corbin treated him like a clown, but he showed him he's not. And this was indeed the last time. And I'm like, yes, please let it be the last time. Both of you move on to something else. You're both too good to be stuck in this month-long feud. But he says he beat Corbin at WrestleMania Backlash, Hell in a Cell, and now in his hometown of Minneapolis, Minnesota. But he wasn't the only one laughing. And I was glad he reflected some fan sentiment there, because yes, you've beat him enough. Let's go on. But he wasn't the only one laughing. It was the whole entire state. He didn't mention Pat McAfee, though. And I'm not going to lie, I hope he would have, because I want this to be the beginning of a little feud between Happy Corbin and Pat McAfee. Probably just because I like to see Pat McAfee wrestle, and I think the two of them, him and Corbin, would put on some nice performances. King's got the greatest one-liners ever. This show is no different. He says Madcap should sue his brain for non-support. That cracked me up. King, he's a mess too. He does not get a pass from me, but he is a national treasure with the one-liners and his observations. But finally, they announced qualifying matches for tonight. There's one with Shinsuke Nakamura and Sami Zayn. I love to see them wrestle too, so no matter who wins, I'm in. And then there's also one with Aaliyah and Shotzi. Now, I hate they're being pitted against each other so much, especially after the way that I'd had them booked in the Women's Tag Team Championship tournament. If you haven't seen that video, you can check it out here. And there's also going to be an Intercontinental Championship rematch between Ricochet and Gunther. He won't win. And I don't really see the big deal about Gunther. Maybe I need to watch him like back in the NXT UK Walter days. But I don't know. As far as like character and presentation, all that goes, he and Ludwig Kaiser to me just kind of look like haughty, generic Nazi knockoffs with like all the personality stripped away. Ugh. Man, can't speak for anybody else, but for my part, they're just kind of tough for me to watch. But the show, the Smackdown Lowdown, I'm going to give it a tentative 3 out of 5. I'll feel better about judging it a bit more as things go on, especially with the 2 new hosts. It was just okay, to be honest. Nothing to get excited over. No segments were must watch, to be honest, even with the presence of the SmackDown Warrior. But what do you all think? What do you think about the hosting change? Who should be Mr. and Miss Money in the Bank? Are you as tired of seeing Vince McMahon on your screen as I am? And by tired, I mean somehow bored and annoyed and terrified he's going to fall in or out of the ring through the ropes all at the same time. But if you want to know more of what I actually think about this whole situation with him and the investigation, feel free to check out my video on Vinnie McNasty. You can access that here, or possibly in the description. I don't know if I'll be able to edit it the same way with having to go straight from my phone. But either way, I'll put these videos in the descriptions if I can't add them across the bars here. But be sure to like this video, share, comment, subscribe, tap that bell icon to make sure you get notifications for when new videos come out. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for your kind patience with all of this tech stuff that's going on, and I am working on a workaround. But I will see you guys soon.